Hey folks, welcome back. I'm David. We're here in my shop where I build Ewor guitars. This is going to be episode number 15 in the CNC guitar building series I'm doing where we're building this guy right here. Now all the CNC machine work is finished on this thing, but we've still got quite a ways to go as you can see. And in this particular video we're going to embark on the finishing process, which means we're going to be doing some sanding. Because if you're going to be building your guitars, you're going to be doing some sanding. Sanding is an incredibly important part of the finishing process, actually the building process of the guitar. And if you really want your guitar to look good, you got to do it right and you got to be very thorough about it. And we're going to dive in this video and go through the entire sanding process. I'm not going to show the whole thing because it's going to take a couple hours, but I do want to hit on all the high points of what I do and what I look out for while I'm sanding and getting a guitar ready for finish to go on. And then by the end of the video, I'm hoping to get some Simtec Sealer sprayed on. This is what I use. This is they call it their Easy Sanding Sealer. It's a polyester-based finish, and it's a two-part. It's catalyzed with this MEKP or MEPK, one of the two. And it's catalyzed with that, and I spray it on with this gun here. This is just a Husky gun I got from Home Depot, I think. It's got a 2.2 millimeter tip, which is a great big tip, and that's because that's pretty thick stuff. So we'll do one, maybe two rounds of that. I'm not really sure. I mean, this cherry and Zirico is all very smooth stuff, and I feel like it's going to, the grain's going to fill in real quick, and hopefully get away with one round. That would be nice if I could do that. So, but anyway, that's what I want to get tackled in this video is the sanding and the sealer. So let's get the camera turned down and let's get going, and we're going to start talking about the sanding. Okay, so as it stands right now, this the neck and the body have all been sanded up to 80 grit. I see that I've still got some ripples around on the edge here from my spindle sander, which I'm going to have to go back over that with 80 again to get it right. I'll clamp it in my leg vise over here, and I'll stick some 80 grit paper on this sanding block here. And I'll be able to go through and like get rid of those ripples. But I think as far as the rest of it goes, I'm good with the 80 and I could switch right up to the 120. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use 120, I've got 180 and then 220. And I believe the 220 is going to get me to the spot where I'm satisfied with everything. And it should, you know, that also leaves enough of I guess a rough enough surface, you could say, to where it gives more for that Simtec sealer to bond onto. So now if I get to the 220 and I'm still not satisfied, I think it should be better, I'll go ahead and take it up to 320, but I think 220 is going to be fine. So if you notice, all of my sandpaper is a sticky back type. This is, I think, 3-inch wide rolls, and then this is my 6-inch disc for my disc sander, which won't be using on this because it broke last time I used it, so and I haven't picked up another one yet. But I like the sticky back sandpaper. I've got some of the regular kind too, but honestly the sticky back stuff is great because you could take it, you could take this stuff and stick it right down to a piece of MDF here. That's a nice flat sanding block. It'll stick right to it and it'll hold it good. And it'll also, I could stick it down to, this is a flexible sanding pad, which is great for like getting around these edges and stuff like that and hitting edges and getting down into there. And it sticks to it. I mean, it's not a permanent stick, but it sticks well enough that it'll grab onto it for you. And you just ain't going to slip around as much. So it's just worth it. It probably costs a little bit more getting the sticky stuff like this, but to me, it's well worth it. So, and that's what the tools I use. I've got this piece of MDF sanding block, and I could make different size ones if I need to. I use a rubber eraser, which is a great little tool for sanding. I'll just wrap a piece of sandpaper around there, and I could get right up into these areas, and there's just enough flex to it that it'll get around some of these contours that you want to. And but it works really well. And I've also got, like I showed you a second ago, I've got some of these flexible sanding pads. This is stuff that's used in the automotive body repair industry, and it works great for that. And I got a round one of those too. This is a sort of a flexible round rod. It's about a 1-inch, maybe 1.25 inches in diameter. And that's great for doing some of these edges, round parts like that. And that's a great thing. And see that sandpaper just stick to it like that. And it's a big help. It helps to hold it on there and everything. And so that works good. And I also might use these card scrapers too. It just kind of depends. I've got a large one and a small one here. And sometimes these are great for like getting in around near these edges and everything. I could scrape in there and get get any sanding marks out or whatever, so that'll work great for that too. And let me point out too, while we're at it, when I get to this stage and I'm actually getting ready to start putting finish on it, I put out this little rubber mat. This is like one of those shelf liner deals you get. You might put it in your drawers to keep your silverware from sliding around, or put it up on your shelves. It's just kind of a cushiony, rubbery stuff, and I like putting that down. It's just a nice soft thing for the guitar to sit on, so I don't accidentally ding it by laying it down too hard on the bench or anything like that. And so as far as the sanding goes, I'm going to start obviously with the highest grit, or the lowest grit, right, with 80 on these edges. And I'm going to go one step at a time, all by hand. I'm going to very carefully go over every inch of this guitar. I'm going to keep my eyes out for any kind of scratches or tool marks that might be in there from the machining process. I'm going to have to get out some of these ripples from the spindle sander. I've got you know, I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna work on these contours and everything. I'm gonna make sure they're blended nicely, although this one's feeling pretty good. I'm gonna keep working on that, making sure all these transitions around here are nice. I gotta make sure there's no sharp edges up here, no sharp points. I gotta make sure that's rounded down. Gotta get this neck joint finished, although that's awfully close. I've gotta basically finish sand it and everything. What I'm going to do is I like to go over the edges. Generally with each grit, I like to go over all the edges first, rounding over these roundovers and everything. And then as the finishing thing, I like to then go over the faces on the front and on the back. And the reason I do that is because I may be getting cross-grained scratches when I'm doing these contours around the corners. I may get cross-grained scratches on the face, and I definitely don't want that because they'll show up like a sore thumb later. So I'll go around the edges first, and then I'll finish it with going over the face, both the front and the back, on each grit. So anyway, I'm going to get clamped over here in my leg vise, I think, and we're going to get rolling with this right now. Okay, so that's all set now. That first round is done. And what I did was I went around all of these edges with 80 grit, and I got out my spindle sander marks that left little like ridges through here, like a waviness through the edges, and I got rid of all that, and I knocked down all these corners. I went very carefully over everything to make sure I had any cross-grain scratches taken out. And you know, so I was using the 80 grit with the flat sandpaper going in the same direction as the grain. Got rid of all that stuff and got it really cleaned up nice. And then after that was done, I went back over and started all over again with 120 grit. And I used my different tools, of course. I used these backing pads, and I used my little rubber eraser and stuff, and I did the same thing. I went over all the perimeter edges with 120, knocked down these corners, got the blends even going nicer than they were before, worked on my neck transition, worked up the neck, and got all these edges done with 120. And then when that was all done, I went back in all the big flat surfaces with this 120 on this foam block and hit all the flat surfaces. So of course, always going with the grain. So now we're going to do exactly the same thing again, except we're going to step it up to 180 this time, and then we'll do 220. And the 180 and 220 should go much quicker, because now instead of getting out cross-grain scratches and tooling marks and stuff like that, I'm simply just replacing the 120 grit scratches with the higher grit scratches from the next level of sandpaper. So anyway, I'm going to turn that camera back down and keep rolling with this thing, and we will be getting to the Simtec Sealer very soon. Okay, so I think I've got this guy pretty good. I've got the entire thing sanded up to 220 grit, and it feels really nice to me. And I'm looking at it real carefully, and I'm not seeing any kind of scratches or anything, and just it feels good and it looks good. I need to pop this guy out of here. So this all looks nice and everything's sanded good. I think we're in good shape. At this stage, what I like to do is I like to wipe the whole thing down with naphtha, because if anything is going to show up, some scratches, this stuff will do it. You put it on there, and it'll kind of highlight any flaws or anything. And if I could find a screwdriver, so I like to just wipe it all down, and it's going to get off any kind of oil or anything like that from my fingerprints or whatever. And pretty soon here, I'm going to start wearing gloves to handle this thing, but for now I just want to wipe it down, basically looking for scratches. So I just put some on a cloth here, and this is also going to give me an idea of the color that this thing is going to be, which I think looks really nice. One thing I may do, just to kind of give it a little depth or whatever, is I may spray a very slight burst around the edge of this in like a brown or something, but we'll see. But I think cherry is very pretty wood, and I think this is going to look nice. So now I need to cover up these couple of holes here. I'm going to cover up my truss rod cover and then the control cavity cover in the back. And I'm going to double-sided sticky tape this guy to a stick and use that. I'll just hold it and spray that. And then these guys here, this is my truss rod cover. I'm just going to put on a little boiled linseed oil is what I think I'm going to put on these guys right here. And I think that'd be nice to have a contrast between these and the body itself. Okay, so I've got all these holes masked up on this thing. I've got my control cavity cover stuck down a little stick. Got my fretboard covered. I got my little handle put on here. So it's time for me to go ahead and put on some the nitrile gloves, and I'm going to wipe this thing down one more time with some naphtha, and then get mixing up some of that sealer and get spraying away. I'm excited. I always love this part of the thing because I get to see what this thing's going to look like with a little clear on there, because it always changes the color a bit. Okay, so I am set to go with this thing now. I mixed myself up a little of the Simtec Sealer. You could probably see it in there. I think it was, I used a 1/4 cup thing, and I got 3/4 cups in there. So anyway, and I put in about 2% of the MEPK, and it should be set to go. I've got the gun, like I said, it's a Husky. I'm spraying at 45 PSI, and it's a 2.2 millimeter tip on it, so it's a great big tip. I'm going to try to keep it turned down way low. Simtec Sealer says apply one tack coat and then one heavy tack coat and 2 flow coats after that. So we're going to try to lay this on. I'm going to get my fan going and start spraying away. And I've got my little guy. This is my control cavity cover. I'll probably shoot this guy first to adjust the gun on it and stuff, and then we'll get going on the guitar. Okay, so it's the next day. I let this guy dry overnight, and I think our first round went on okay. I think everything went well. I'm definitely going to have to do a second round on it. The zero coat's got some deeper grain marks in it, and that wenge that goes up that neck, you can probably see those pits in there. That's actually just the pores of the wood and the depth of the grain on some of the grain. So it's definitely going to have to, another coat on the thing, which is cool. I was kind of expecting that, or another round actually. So that each round I do 1 tack coat and 2 flow coats. So it's basically, I call it 2.5 coats. And anyway, and I think that went well. So now in between coats, what I want to do is I want to sand this down. I've got to, for one thing, I have to roughen up the surface. And so I want to sand it down, and I'm also going to sand it down to level off the highs and lows, because the sealer is, it's a good product and everything. It works really well, but it does go on with a good bit of orange peel. And you want to level off the high points down to the low points. So that stuff that sunk way down in the grain, we're trying to build that up so we have one smooth level surface across the top. And so as we're filling up that deep grain pockets, we don't want to be piling this stuff up on the surface because it's just going to get too thick, and the thinner the finish, I think the better. So anyway, so what I have to do now is I've got to sand this down and get it leveled down, sanded down, and get it ready for the next round of Simtec. And let me show you what I like to use. This is called Super Aslix. I'll spell it for you. ASSILEX. It's a great product. It was originally developed for the automobile bodywork companies, finishing companies that paint cars, and it is just an absolutely awesome product. This is their ocean blue sheets, I think, which is their 360 grit, or it's the equivalent of what they call a 360 grit. And it's a fabric. It's a fabric material, so it's very flexible. And it has just the nicest sanding surface on it. The grit pattern is very even, and it's just awesome stuff. And you could use it, it's got a Velcro back on it. You could use, this is an interface pad. You could put it on this pad, or you could put it directly onto this sanding block here, which I'll do both. Anyway, but this is just an awesome product right here. It cleans really well. I'll use 1, maybe 2 sheets. This is a sheet. For this whole guitar for this round here, and it's going to leave a really nice a grippy surface on the Simtec Sealer for the next round to go on. So anyway, why don't I go ahead and get this camera turned down, and we're going to show you what we're going to do here to get this leveled off, and I want to show you the type of things you need to look out for as you're doing this leveling process. Okay, so for these larger open areas, I like to use just this foam block. It's got the micro Velcro stuff on there. And I just stick my sheet right on it right there. And I'll basically just pick an area like this right here, and I'll just start sanding away. I kind of work it in swirls like this. And as I'm going, you can see already, you can see I've got some dull areas and I've got some shiny areas. The shiny areas are the deeper pits, and the dull areas what's been sanded. What my goal is to do is to sand the high surface down to the low surface. When I get as far as I could possibly go, and there's still some shiny spots in there, that's going to mean I need another round of sealer on this thing to build up those low, and then I'll sand it all back down again before I start finishing. But anyway, so I basically just go through the entire body and neck, kind of one area at a time. I try to get one well underway. You could see here where it builds up around these holes too. It usually like peaks around these holes. I'm not sure why that happens, but it does. And as I sand, and I'm trying to keep very even, straight pressure on this too. So that's what I do. I keep sanding until that stuff goes away. Now, when I get around to these contours, of course, this is a contour this is a wide enough contour I could lay this larger pad onto it. But when I want to sand across this ridge right here, I take that guy off, and I've got this flexible backing pad that has the same Velcro deal on that. And this will now contour to that corner, and it still sort of equalizes the pressure on my fingers so I don't cut through. Now this guitar doesn't have any stain on it, But I'll tell you what, the ones that have stain on it are really, really tough. You want to be super careful when you're sanding these things, because if you're sanding across a ridge like this or on a corner, it is so easy to sand through that sealer and cut through your stain. And once you've done that, once you sand it into that stain and you cut out some of the color, you're stuck with a big fix, one that I don't like to do. Okay, so as you can see, that's getting to look better. I've got shiny spots I can see here in my, right here in my veneer. I've got some pockets in that. That veneer, remember, was a white oak, which is a pretty grainy material. And even though it's just a tiny little thin veneer, you're still seeing it where it's showing up in the sealer. But that's no problem. That's why we're doing what we're doing right now. We're working on getting rid of all that. So this 360 grit is definitely my main sanding stuff when I'm sanding sealer. When I have a tough area or a run or something like that, which is what I have over here, I'm not opposed at all to stepping it up and doing some 220, which is fine, just to hit these areas. Like I said before, I wouldn't be doing this if it was a stained guitar, but since there's no stain, it doesn't bother me too much to cut through it, although I still don't want to. But anyway, so I'll step it up to 220 in some of these areas and get rid of the heavy stuff. And then as soon as I get it knocked down, I'll go back to the 360. Okay, so I think that went well overall. I sanded through in a couple of spots. Right there you can see a little bit. No big deal because it's not a stained guitar. That may be the only spot. No, I think I got through on the Wenge here a little bit too. But, I was being super aggressive with that 220. Just wanting to get this stuff down as thin as possible. And I think I did good. And I'm really quite pleased with the whole thing. Of course, then I went over the whole thing also with the 360. Just to eliminate any deep scratches, but I don't think you could probably shoot over the 220 and that'd be fine too. But anyway, so this thing definitely needs another coat to fill in this Wenge back here. And most of this cherry is just smooth as silk now. You could put a finish on that right now, but for the sake of this Wenge, I got to do it there. And I think the Zero Coat had a few little shiny spots up here. And for that, and then there's like in the binding, let me find some, like right up here in the red oak, or the white oak veneer in there. You can see I've got some gaps here, and I'm thinking that's some inconsistencies in the natural state of the red oak or white oak rather, is it's kind of a varied grain in the thing. So I think I'm picking up some of that on these edges and a little bit here. But what I think I'm going to do is, before I spray this again, I'm going to mix up some of this stuff and take a brush, and I'm going to just drizzle some in these little spots right here, because that could be fairly deep, and I don't want to keep coating this guitar if I don't have to. So anyway, so I'm going to put some in here, let that dry, sand it, and then hang it up and shoot the whole thing again. And I believe that'll be ready for finishing after that. So. But anyway, overall, I'm quite pleased. So I'm going to mix up a little bit of that Simtec Sealer, and we're going to drip some in some of these little gaps here. All right. Well, if you made it this far in a video about sanding wood, you're really something else. I'm very impressed. I'm glad you made it. I'm glad you stuck around for the end. Anyway, that's about it for this one here. You know, I know sanding is kind of a boring thing to do, but it is so incredibly important no matter what the finishes you're putting on the guitar. Whether it's urethane or oil or whatever you're doing, wax finish, whatever, that sanding portion of the finishing is incredibly important, and it's got to be done well. So anyway, so we are done with this video for now. Appreciate you all checking it out. If you dig this sort of thing, how about you give me a like and subscribe? And if you all come back next week, we're going to start laying on some Tamco Euro Clear. Anyway, God bless you. You all have a wonderful week, and we'll see you on the next one.